Our final speaker this morning is Dr. Ronald, sorry, not having a good day. Ron's currently an independent consultant, and he is an adjunct scholar at the American Public Policy Institute and has branched off into a new field, naval history. Formerly, he was the Herbert and Joyce Morgan Senior Research Fellow at Heritage Foundation, where he recently retired from. Please join me in welcoming Ron Utt.
Thank you, Tom, for mentioning my new career, and what you didn't mention was the book, and so I had included in my PowerPoint presentation a subtle, subliminal bit of self-promotion, and so there it is. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Just building on what Bob's initial presentation in the beginning, where he sort of laid out the funding and the need situation, is that the roads are deteriorating. We desperately need more capacity, particularly in a lot of urban areas, and roads are deteriorating, and that's up against essentially a very stagnant source of funding that I think is only going to get worse over time as state and federal budget battles heat up, worse than they already are now, with reauthorization of the federal program coming up in a year. With sequestration in place, you could conceivably see a significant decline in how much the feds kick into the state kitty for transportation. So this has induced many people to consider public-private partnerships, particularly my home state of Virginia, as a mechanism to supplement the existing sources. And since most of these work on tolls, it's kind of a partner to the kind of concept that the proposal Bob is pushing. Virginia is certainly not the first state, but one of the first states to actually create a legislative framework for the orderly mechanism and orderly process of establishing public-private partnerships, which is very complicated when the public and the private sector come together. You need sort of all sorts of transparencies and critical conditions and so on to make it workable. Virginia was, as I said, one of the pioneers in this area. Dulles Greenway, well, not a public-private partnership so much, but was actually one of the first modern private toll roads in the country, opened in 1995, but was authorized essentially through one-off legislation passed in Virginia in 1988 at the urging of a former Reagan official, Ralph Stanley, who put this whole thing together. In turn, suddenly here we had this new road in a critically congested part of the country, in the state. And people say, well, if the private sector's that willing, maybe we should have, instead of just one-off legislation, sort of comprehensive legislation. So this led to the enactment of the Virginia Public-Private Transportation Act in 1995, which is what's essentially the framework, legal framework by which these things take place. At the moment, we have three major projects. One's completed, two are underway, and I believe that you saw the 495 hot lanes yesterday. They were completed last spring, and they're now fully operational. Underway and expected to be completed in 2014, next year, are hot lanes in Northern Virginia to replace the existing HOV lanes that are the most successful HOV lanes in the country right now. And also just getting underway is the Portsmouth Tunnel in the Hampton Roads area in southeast Virginia, which is a very congested area because of the rivers and bays that separate all the leading urban areas. Just going into the details of 495 hot lanes, particularly how they're being financed. You have 14 miles of new four-lane highway built in the median of an existing highway. The cost is $2 billion, variably priced tolls, and as I mentioned, it was opened last spring. The source of funding for that, $409 million from Virginia, almost $600 million in both a TIFIA loan and private activity bonds, and $350 million in equity from the two partners that are putting this together. The I-95 hot lanes, this converts two-lane existing reversible HOV lanes to three-lane reversible hot lanes. and extends them another 11 miles further to the south, with plans to extend it another 20 miles after that, assuming that it works out financially. The cost of this is estimated at a little less than $1 billion. The reason this is longer and cheaper is they're building on the existing roadbed that's already there. In the other hot lanes, there was no roadbed to build on. Virginia is kicking in only a modest amount on this. I think mostly their contribution is in kind, that is shifting the existing roadway over to the partnership, the existing HOV lanes. Private activity bonds, again, a TIFIA loan, and almost $400 million in private equity. And the final project, again, just getting underway, is the third tunnel under the under the Elizabeth River that connects Norfolk with Portsmouth. And as I said, a very congested urban area. Now, this is a little bit different than the other projects because this is funded by tolls on the new tunnel and the reimposition of index tolls on the two existing tunnels that were built in the 1960s. The total cost of this is estimated at $2 billion, and it's expected to be open in 2017. Again, you can see the combination of essentially the same types of financing, although in different volumes, to achieve the $2.1 billion. Now, this is because of the nature of the tolling and the financing of this. This has generated a lawsuit that at the circuit court level was successful. Citizen group, citizens in the area, including the government of Portsmouth, Virginia, filed suit largely against and to stop the planned or proposed or authorized imposition of the tolls on the two other tunnels in 2014. The court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs in September, arguing the toll plan is unconstitutional. And worse yet, the plaintiffs' counsel in this, who has some experience in fighting these sorts of things, claims that this could conceivably undo all of the public-private partnerships in Virginia that are underway and already existing. This has been appealed to the government of Virginia and VDOT appealed it to the state Supreme Court on an expedited basis. They've already held their arguments last month, and a ruling is expected in November. But this is a fairly important one because if the ruling stays, then this whole thing unravels financially because you can't have three tunnels, two with no tolls, one with tolls, and expect it to work. It's already underway. The money has been borrowed. And so it's, if the thing stays, then this really is going to have to be paid for and financed and supported by the government of Virginia. Essentially, the tolls have been added back on two existing tunnels. Those tolls had expired in 1986. They had been on there since the early 1960s, expired, and now they're being reimposed for 58 years, and they're being indexed to inflation. It's a very unpopular deal. Old Dominion University took a poll and discovered that only 23% of the people in the area support the deal as it is, although over 40% support the tunnel, the new tunnel, but say that the money should come from someplace else, preferably manna from heaven, which is an important filler in most of these projects. Anyway, there's no such problems in the other P3s because they're all greenfield, brand new projects, and the only people that pay the toll are the ones that are using it. And this is not the first anti-toll action that has bedeviled Virginia's efforts to try to improve the roads and improve funding. Similar concerns to this killed the I-81 P3 toll project that I think Koch Industries had put forward about a decade ago. And it's also killed the governor's recent proposal to toll I-95 near the North Carolina border. The idea there was it would minimize the number of Virginians who have to pay the toll, but maximize the number of interstate travelers on there who would have to pay it. So I mean, it's only fair. Anyway, this is what Maryland and Delaware do with their toll roads. Anyway, specifically, The judge ruled in this case that the tolls are a tax, not a user fee, because people who are using one tunnel and paying a toll on it are financing another tunnel. And he then ruled that because it's a tax, the Virginia Constitution does not authorize or allow the state legislature to assign taxing authority to something like a public-private partnership. And so therefore, the whole process is unconstitutional, can't go forward. He even ruled that the planned February toll can't go into effect, even though the governor asked for a stay until it's fully argued. Supreme Court heard the case, as I said, and this has the people who've already lent the money project are in a panic mode. The Department of Transportation, as you can imagine, the Department of Transportation has required that the state of Virginia guarantee the TIFIA debt, and an analyst from Fitch rating companies had said that, you know, if this ruling stays, then the Virginia government is also liable for all the private activity bonds that were issued. So this could be a massive shift from the private to the public if this ruling goes. So we don't know what's going to happen. But there are other problems, I think, that have bedeviled the public-private partnerships over the last year. There's a growing political opposition. We've had mediocre financial performance in some of the existing private toll roads, and sometimes there's, tragically, a combination of both. For example, the Dulles Greenway has experienced financial difficulties since it was opened. It's never gone bankrupt. Nobody's ever lost any money. But you've had constant financial restructurings to make it happen. They now need a big toll increase. They have made a request to the Virginia Corporate Commission, which this toll road has to do, whereas none of the other P3s will. And so it's a formal request to a public body: can we raise our tolls? And what has happened is that you have our Frank Wolf, essentially elected officials from all levels of government have written in opposition to the toll increase to the Corporate Commission. The U.S. congressman who represents the area, the delegates and senators who serve in Richmond representing the area, and the county of Loudoun County have all filed petitions to prevent the toll increase from happening. So we don't know, with that kind of firepower, it's hard to say how this will end up. And about a year ago, preceding the effort here, the current effort to stop the toll, is that one of the highly influential members of the Virginia House of Delegates, who was the chairman of the Transportation Committee, had proposed essentially the nationalization of this private greenway. And of course, he's a Republican. And so he was defeated in the primary, so that sort of died by essentially a Tea Party type candidate there. But the idea was if we go from private debt to tax-exempt debt, the debt service will fall, and that will allow for lower tolls. And of course, then there's government efficiency versus private sector efficiency, which will also help out there. The Pocahontas Parkway was actually one of the first pseudo-public-private partnerships. It's a 63-20 not-for-profit corporation, opened in 2002, has never lived up to its planned ridership, and essentially facing insolvency. It was hived off on Transurban in 2006. They thought, well, with our skills, we could turn it around. They couldn't, and so Transurban has given it to the creditors who have lent it $300 million, most of whom are European. So at least, the costs have been shared quietly. So we'll never make anything of that. The 495 hot lanes that you saw the other day are too new to say that they may be in trouble. But the pro forma financial statements that went with the financing package presumed and projected that daily ridership, paying ridership, would be 66,000 a day. In the first, 9 months of operation, or however long, the most recent quarter, and it's been rising month to month, the most recent quarter it was up to an average of 37,000, or almost 38,000 per day. And the record day, the highest of any day, was 47,000, which was on September the 12th, and that's 20,000 riders below what was projected. So I'm not sure what the financial implications are there, but it's something certainly to keep.
They said 40,000.
Pardon?
They said 40,000 as a tourist.
Okay, yeah. Well, they rounded it up. But actually, this is their September quarter, so maybe, you know, October has been much better. But they're still short. 40,000 is less than 66,000. Anyway, and other political problems, I talked about the Portsmouth Tunnel, I mentioned the I-81 proposal, the McDonnell I-95 proposal. The irony of this, as some of you Virginians know, who've watched this, is that nobody's complaining about the huge toll increases that are on the Dulles, the publicly owned Dulles Toll Road to finance the Silver Line, as you know. So here we have an act within the public sector that violates what the constitutional protections that the circuit court says we have against taxes tolls being essentially diverted to something else, being the form of taxes. So clearly, if this was not in the private sector, was that 5 minutes or 2 minutes? Okay. You get a bum tap up here, and I can't remember whether it's 5 or 2. So anyway, so what we're left is that it's irony, but we're really waiting for the Supreme Court ruling. I mean, that could really be significant. And there we go. I think this has, important implications for how this continues in Virginia. If most of these things end up in the more pessimistic outcome, I can't imagine anybody engaging in another one, and I'd be hard-pressed to imagine somebody financing any of these things. But I think it extends beyond Virginia, because since Virginia has pursued these things so aggressively, since it is a state with a lot of congestion where these things have been, so they should be successful. And it's also a very business-friendly state. To not do well there, I think, has important implications for how enthusiastic people will be in other states to take what could otherwise be a very valuable concept. As I pointed out here, that what you've done here with these 3 projects is you've leveraged $1 billion of public tax money to acquire another $4 billion to build 3 projects at $5 billion. I mean, that's a great deal. That's $4 billion that you didn't have to raise from the taxpayers. And so this offers great opportunities in a time of financial shortages for those projects that fit the bill. So if this turns out bad, then we really do have some problems in terms of how many tools we have in our tool belt to deal with the financing of surface transportation in the future. Boom. I beat you by 2 minutes.